When fighting a champion, the universal rule of thumb in learning how to best deal with them is to minimize contact when their pressure is at its fullest capacity and maximize contact when the inverse happens. Oftentimes in a matchup guide or when navigating a team fight, information such as knowing if lashes are down on their main carries can give your team more confidence in attacking since they know the enemy team lacks critical escape options that would otherwise deter your engage. Playing around a champion's threat windows is an integral part of League's gameplay, knowing when your odds of victory are at their highest or lowest points. On a more rudimentary level, awareness of ability cooldowns and durations take precedence when fighting your opponent. For instance, among AD carries, you ideally want to fight them when their main buffing ability is down, Zaya W, Kaisa E, Misfortune W, so on and so forth. But how exactly do you go about fighting someone who never runs out of gas, someone who can theoretically fight forever? As kind of a spiritual cousin of the toggle ability and reset mechanic archetype, there exists a category of abilities known for having conceptually limitless uptime through continuously meeting a condition, which I will informally be calling them infinite duration abilities or alternatively forever abilities. These skills have become more prolific in recent times, with virtually all of them having been implemented within the last 2 or 3 years, give or take. Today I'll be discussing them, what makes them so dangerous, how they can be shut down, and whether or not they're a well-designed mechanic. Infinite duration abilities aren't the only thing that wants to last forever. How about having someone always on deck to play with? Best way you can do that is with Tap and GG. Tap and GG is a one-stop shop where you can find the perfect duel partner for you. Whether you want to have a skillful player to help your odds in solo queue, a group you want to squad up with and flex, someone to vibe with an ARAB, an arena partner, or maybe even try your luck with the fair sex if you want a different kind of experience. Tapin's the best place to do it. Alongside League, the platform also offers teammates for Fortnite, Valorant, and TFT if you play any of those games. Also, if you're looking to be a bit more productive, Tapin has coaches on deck for you if you want to learn more about the game in addition to them playing with you. Basically, anytime you want to queue up but don't feel like playing all by yourself, Tapin's the most reliable place to find someone to hang with. Feel free to use my link on screen or in the description below, and for any of you brave enough to try the Gamer Girl category, let me know if you snag some digits. Thanks again to Tapin for sponsoring the video, but for now, let's get back on topic. For the sake of clarity, we should first clear up the difference between a toggle and forever ability. A toggle is characterized by the player having the liberty to activate and deactivate it whenever it suits them, that being Urgot's Purge rank 5, Amuma's Despair, Anivia's Glacial Storm, things of that nature. Though some of them come with a cooldown upon deactivation, the user has complete control over how long they want it to last, whether for a split second or indefinitely. The key differentiation to make is if the player has control over how long they want it to last for. Infinite duration abilities do share the same possibility of lasting forever, but with a few caveats in exchange for producing significantly more impact in a fight. For starters, most of them can be activated whenever the player sees fit. However, maintaining their duration is a question of if they can meet the activation requirement to sustain it, which almost always pertains to attacking enemy champions. If achieved, said ability can last forever with the added benefit of incurring no cost in terms of resource, providing a substantial boost in pressure to the point where fighting them in this state can prove ruinous to the opposing team, especially in long drawn-out fights. That is unless of course they're significantly far enough ahead in gold or outnumbering the champion in question. The extreme staying power afforded by forever abilities is kept in check by being among the lowest impact abilities if you rely purely on their base effects and duration. So in a way, while most other abilities have a guaranteed 100% impact, forever abilities might start at 50, then gradually ramp up to 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, and then pass on into 110, 120, 130, so on and so forth based on how long they last. Or in simpler terms, forever abilities are balanced around the assumption that they'll last longer than their base duration. Given most of them have the same cooldowns as other abilities of their type, they heavily rely on momentum to achieve the most benefit. The 5 that I can recall off the top of my head are Zeri's Lightning Crash, Briar's Certain Death, Olaf's Ragnarok, Swain's Demonic Ascension, and to some extent Darius' Hemorrhage. Let's go through each one at a time to elaborate more on what I mean. Beginning with Lightning Crash, Zeri unleashes a massive explosion, damaging all enemies around her and gaining overcharge for 5 seconds. Attacking an enemy champion during this time will replenish a second and a half of uptime, up to but not exceeding 5 seconds. While in overcharge, Zeri gains bonus attack speed and movement speed, with the latter increasing incrementally with every attack she lands on a champion, meaning she can potentially have infinite movement speed assuming she stays in combat forever. Basically, so long as Zeri's continuously attacking enemy champions, she will perpetually be in overcharge and even get stronger in the process. The best way to respond to this is either to kite her out or to burst her down before she ramps up too quickly. That's if you can even catch her with how fast she runs around in this state. Briar's Certain Death is a near global range projectile that locks onto the first enemy champion struck. After a short delay, she dashes with incredible speed towards that champion, triggering an explosion upon arrival that fears all enemies around her besides the marked enemy and gaining Hematomania, a buff that grants bonus armor and magic resist equal to a portion of her AT, and bonus lifesteal and movement speed, simultaneously entering her blood frenzy state in the process, prioritizing the champion she just tagged. Unlike her normal Blood Frenzy, Hematomania has an infinite duration and will not expire until either the target dies, she dies, or she cancels it preemptively using Chilling Scream. Contrasting from other infinite duration abilities, certain death does not need to be maintained, quite the opposite. The player needs to know when to bail out if it proves too dangerous to continue the assault. That being said, it shares the same principle of conditionally lasting forever. Olaf's Ragnarok immediately cleanses any crowd control affecting him before granting a sizable boost in attack damage and total CC immunity for the duration of the ultimate, as well as a convenient boost in speed for the first second of the ability, which is used to get closer to your opponent. While the ultimate only stays up for 3 seconds, it can be re-extended to 2.5 upon landing a basic attack or reckless swing against an enemy champion. In other words, much like Zeri, provided you're attacking something, Ragnarok is able to last forever. Swain's Demonic Ascension functions identically to Olaf and Zeri, wherein he creates a massive damaging aura around himself that also heals him for every target struck. The aura has an infinite duration if he's able to keep at least one enemy champion within range of it, naturally making him quite dangerous to fight as it gives him a source of continuous DPS and sustain. However, unlike Olaf and Zeri, Demonic Ascension doesn't exactly refresh its duration, rather it functions on a tick-based decay that accelerates in depletion after the first 5 seconds. It becomes noticeably easier to replenish that resource based on the number of nearby enemy champions being damaged, and even has a reset mechanic built into it where takedowns instantly bring the resource back to full. Lastly, Darius' Hemorrhage, which happens to be the only non-ultimate forever ability if I'm not mistaken. You might be hard-pressed to call this an infinite duration ability as it's a passive that can technically be achieved at any time, but while it has no cooldown, it doesn't have an on-demand activation. You need to get 5 bleed stacks on a target first. Doing so, however, then activates Noxian Might, granting Darius a catastrophic boost in AD and making it so he instantly applies full stacks onto a target through his usual means. This state will remain in effect until 5 seconds elapse without him damaging an enemy champion, so it's still the same basic principle. A number of you might be asking what's the difference between an infinite duration ability and one that can refresh or extend its duration upon takedown like Mastery's Highlander or Vayne's Final Hour. Simple, the latter category has a finite cap, the number of enemy champions on the field, whereas a forever ability has no cap. I mean, in practice, yes, there's a cap because at a certain point the enemy team will die, but fundamentally that's the key distinction to make. Infinite duration abilities are just that, infinite in duration, assuming you continuously meet the activation requirement. But yes, if we're splitting hairs, in practice, forever abilities don't actually last forever since at a certain point you'll run out of means to maintain them. Considering the infinite duration clause of forever abilities unanimously entails attacking an enemy champion, logic dictates the best way to deal with these abilities is to temporarily disengage from them to stall out their duration before re-engaging. An alternative course would be to fight in such a way where you never actually commit to an all-in. Forever abilities are inherently committal. They can apply astronomical amounts of pressure with the caveat that you're in a state of constant interaction with the enemy team, a fight to the death if you will. But if say the enemy chooses to play a more neutral-oriented fighting style or go for quick burst trades, that's where these abilities are at a disadvantage. It's for this reason alone that I believe infinite duration abilities are actually well designed. They tax the user's knowledge and intuition on when's the best time to use it, since if they fail, they won't get another opportunity for a while, while at the same time giving the opponent ample ways in playing around it, its potential power not guaranteed. Also, unlike recent mechanics where careless use of the ability can be forgiven just by scoring a takedown, there's no way to get a forever ability back up after they wear off except by waiting for it to come off cooldown. I suppose if you're evaluating it purely on the basis of number versus number, pragmatically the only way to beat someone with a forever ability is to avoid interacting with them while they're in that state, which might feel a bit stat checky. I get where you're coming from. Then again, that might be the most straightforward way to deal with them, but it's not the only way to deal with them. Against, let's say, Mordekaiser, taking into consideration the massive amount of stats he takes away from you, few champions, if any, have the muscle to fight him head-on while inside death realm, so in that case, the only thing you can really do is run away. Comparatively, it's still possible to fight a forever ability champion. They're not invincible per se, you just have to navigate him more tactically. As an example, fighting Olaf is very simple. You have to go 2.5 seconds without him landing a basic attack or reckless swing on you. Mind you, for certain champs who don't have an easy way to escape like Mundo or Leona or what have you, it's easier said than done, but for other champs, simply dodging his axe can open up a window to avoid him for just long enough to wear out his ultimate. Coincidentally, Sonya's Hourglass puts you in a stasis for that exact amount of time, making it a direct counter to Olaf. Outside of that, you can always play a more neutral-oriented playstyle, poking him from afar. If he's at half health before he tries to go in, you can burst him down for the remaining amount. You can also try and bait it out from him, feigning attack before retreating as quickly as possible, and that goes for everyone to be honest. Against Darius, the best way to deal with Noxian Might is to never let him get it, only opting for short trades and then falling back. Against Swain, you can run the clock on his ultimate by pushing him away from you or dashing away, stalling out the duration of his ultimate. Again, depending on who you play, some champs may not have the option to run, especially after he builds Rylai's, but there are more champions who can play around it than those who can't. Few other things to note is that seldom is it the Forever ability itself that makes it a threat, but how it makes everything else more threatening. On its own, Demonic Ascension's not that scary. It does like 60 plus 10% AP and damage per second at rank 3, not all that scary. What Swain really likes it for is using it as a conduit for Rylai's to slow everyone down, making the rest of his kit Q, W, and E that much easier to line up and land. Sari's ultimate itself doesn't really do all that much, but what it does do is empower her existing moveset. Certain Death, Noxian Light, and Ragnarok all do the same. They're amplifiers, not forms of pressure on their own, if that makes sense. They're very similar to steroid ultimates if you want to think of it that way. Combining that with infinite duration abilities, technically starting out less impactful than other ultimates at the beginning, and that alone is an opportunity for players to respond. Picture it like this: a Forever ability champion starts out at base pressure, 100% for the sake of argument. Upon activation of their ultimate, they jump to 120, and then for each passing second that number can creep upwards, 125, 130, 135, 140, etc. Most of the champions, when they use their ultimate, their pressure instantly rockets from 100 to 150, and then once their ultimate's gone, they drop back down to 100 for the remainder of the fight. Granted, Olaf and Briar both receive immediate stat increases for their respective ultimates, but what truly makes an infinite duration ability threatening is not the intrinsic value it provides, rather every other ultimate eventually runs out of time or impact, whereas these ones can keep going. If hypothetically Syndra burns her entire combo and Swain's still standing, her pressure drops from 150 to 100 while Swain is still chilling at 130, putting the Syndra player at a serious disadvantage because she's all gassed out while Swain's still fighting at full capacity. Therein lies the fighting chance. Because the strength of infinite duration abilities comes in the form of outlasting the uptime of most other abilities, once more they're valued under the assumption that the champion in question will reach that point. But what if they don't? What if this Ares dove on by talent? In those scenarios, something with upfront impact would be more useful, like a Xayah ultimate, Ashe Arrow for a quick stun to buy some time, maybe a Kaisa ultimate for immediate shielding, Tristana Buster Shot, things of that nature. This brings me to the final point I want to make about infinite duration abilities. They're not particularly good at offering immediate response to enemy pressure. If you're caught in a bad position, Forever abilities are among the worst when it comes to turning fights around due to them offering less immediate impact than other ultimates, making them almost exclusively advantage oriented, abilities you use when you're in a position to attack, not defend or retreat. Olaf's ultimate rewards you for constantly attacking. It doesn't accomplish much when you're running away. Same goes for Zeri. Lightning Crash gives you an incentive to attack, not retreat. Although I suppose depending on who you're up against you can kite with the increased tempo. If Darius gets engaged on, he might not survive long enough to get 5 stacks. Briar's ultimate is completely useless when under fire, much less her entire kit. She's the definition of do or die. I think the reason Riot's adding so many of these is because it makes things more dynamic, not just a game of who has more stats and whatnot. 2 of the 5 champs I went over in this video got their Forever abilities via mid-scope updates, Swain and Olaf. Prior to 12.9, Olaf's ultimate used to have a flat duration of 6 seconds, giving it more fixed value. However, this resulted in a very one-dimensional game state that forced the Olaf player to just beeline for one person and try to take them out during that time. With new Ragnarok, you run the risk of Olaf being even more useless than before, or you have a chance of being more useful than before. There's nuance to his kit. Now instead of a diver who wants to try and kill the enemy backline before he himself gets exploded, Olaf is one of the best front-to-back juggernauts in the game, especially in tandem with the new armor shred on his Q. Not to mention the fact that he's now able to fight indefinitely, which also lends more to his narrative of being a berserker who can fight forever as opposed to only for 6 seconds. You can argue this makes a champion more inconsistent or prone to getting matchup screwed compared to if they had a fixed duration, but at least in my eyes, what's important is opportunity, not just for the player but for the opponent. It's the same as point and click versus skill shot. Point and click offers a guaranteed result, but for balance's sake, you can't make that guaranteed result too big because there's no counterplay. On the other hand, for a skill shot, you can give more value since there's no guarantee of it. Zeri, Swain, Darius, Olaf, Briar, their respective Forever abilities can be among the most dangerous in the game, but the onus is on the player to know when, where, and how they can reach that point with the lowest amount of risk, and conversely the onus is on the opponents to conduct themselves in such a way that minimizes the likelihood of those champions achieving that strength. It's much more interactive than toggle abilities or steroid ultimates in my opinion. As someone who enjoys playing Renekton, instead of a fixed duration of 15 seconds, it would be interesting if the base duration went down to 8 seconds, but for every Fury empowered ability you cast he gets 4 more seconds, so his ultimate can theoretically last forever if you're constantly generating Fury and using Fury abilities. I think that out of all the modern overpowered mechanics, this one is one of the better designed ones. Just like how I think infinite value abilities are really cool. It makes the game more dynamic and not just whoever has a bigger stick. What do you guys think about Forever abilities? Do you agree with my thoughts on them, or do you find them to be badly designed? If so, make sure to share your points in the comments down below. For now, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other ability discussions if you haven't yet. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.